Sure, yeah. So yeah, this is, I suppose, this is code's proposition or how we talk about ourselves. And actually, that's probably the reason why we're talking about service design today, because it's the change bit of the make change. So we make a lot of stuff, and we found ourselves having to kind of stretch into the change space. So like what you would think of customer service design or organisational change, those kind of things. So that's what we're about and what we'll talk about today. So we'll go on to the next slide and just a bit of like house rules for the session, just to help make everyone get the most out of this half hour. So we'll be talking a lot about stuff that we know loads about, and obviously we know that you won't. Maybe it's all new to you. So if you want to ask questions as you go, you can pop them in to the chat on the side. So just like try and make a note of the slide you were kind of referencing or whatever, or just a question, and we'll try and curate and come back to that maybe at the end. And obviously it'll be available, it's been recorded, it'll be available on YouTube later on, so you can watch it back, so you don't have to worry about necessarily scribbling down all the notes and things like that. Just take it in and take part in the discussion. And if you can keep your mic off if you're not talking, that'd be really great, because we don't want our flow being broken. Yeah, sometimes with the toilet being flushed in the background could be a bit off-putting. That's happened to me in the past. Someone having an argument in the background with a partner, whatever. But yeah, if you can keep your mic off, that'd be awesome. And if you want to ask a question, just put your video on. That's like a good signal for us to know that you want to ask a question in real life. Otherwise, just do it in chat. I think that's it.
That is it. So today is part one, from product thinking to service thinking. So this is what Colin and I are going to talk about today, is how we're actually evolving our design practice to influence business strategy and organisational change. So the change and make change, as Colin said before. So hopefully it's going to make sense as we go through. If it doesn't, that's cool. Drop us a question. We'll try and articulate as much as possible. But essentially, yeah, we just want to share with you how we're going to evolve our practice really here at Code. So because I'm talking, I'll start off. I'm Jess. I'm head of user UX and research really at Code. So all things that involve kind of user research, I help the teams out and support them, making sure that we're gathering the right kind of insight at the right time, and almost like working on validating our solutions as well with our performance team. So all things kind of user generated is what I get up to.
Cool, yeah, I'm Colin, head of design, and I kind of like traditionally looking after the makers, the solution people, the people in the making screen-based in things or software or whatever. But that's obviously stretched and evolved into product design, and it's probably more evolving into more service. But it's ultimately my bit's more in the maker bit, I suppose. But we work very closely together with Jess, and we have my side's more generalist, and we kind of have a role in all the way through. But yeah, that's me.
Ace. So if you've ever seen a talk by Code before, you'll know that this is our core principles and the way that we do things. But just to give a bit of a recap in case you don't, so we have like these three core principles that guide what we do and how we do it. So we have doing the right thing, always making sure that we're doing the right thing for the right people. So that's our design thinking kind of mechanism. We have doing it the right way. So that's our modern engineering practice, really making sure that we're making things in the right way and making them as useful to people as possible. And then finally, we also do it efficiently. And that's our lean delivery approach as well. So making sure that we're getting stuff out there and delivering on value as soon as we can. And all that means is that we're effective in the things that we actually get up to. And it's really important for us to kind of cover our manifesto when we're talking to people about what it is that we get up to, and these are kind of things that we live and breathe by really. And I think one that we'll focus on today is probably that solve problems over predefined solutions. I think that's really where we come from, is identifying a problem and really trying to explore ways of solving that problem, no matter whether that's a digital output or something completely different. It could be organisational change. We personally really believe in experiences over designs as well. There's no point in designing something in a silo. It's about that full end-to-end experience, and that's just how we kind of approach things. We deal in product over projects. So if you hear us talking about products, we're generally referring to a website, but obviously that could be an app or something else as well. So if it gets a bit confusing, product means digital thing really for us. And one of the things that we really care about is value over volume. We don't just care about shipping lots of things really, really quickly and just getting lots of stuff and features out, but it's actually about where's the value? How can we actually deliver something that's going to make a difference or make change for a business? And obviously, head of research over here, insights over opinion. Love getting them insights and making sure that we're doing everything really, really informed as much as possible, and then measuring that impact as well, so we can see whether we are actually making a change or not, rather than we think we did a good idea. Then last two, iterative over big bang. We like to release lots of stuff really quickly and make sure that we're doing the right thing, and adaptable. So we really are adaptable to any problem that comes up in front of us. So why are we talking to you today about how we're evolving our practice? Well, one of the things that we've seen a lot over the past few years actually is that partners do come to us with really focused problems and really, really broad challenges. And that can be anything from, we're losing revenue in this funnel, it's costing us too much and we don't know why, help us make this kind of really small funnel work more effectively for us, up to the really, really top end, which is about, we know what we need, we know that we need to change, we know that we're not doing great, but we don't know how and why. So when you've got that full spectrum of kind of problems that are coming to you, we realise that we need to start making some change in the way that we approach these problems to our partner need. By the way, Carl, feel free to chip in whenever. I'll probably chip in for you. But yeah, the point of that is that it's really big picture or really, really kind of solution focused. So it could be strategic or it could be something that we make. The other reason that we're kind of doing this is we hear lots of people saying they're doing service design in the industry, but I think there's a lot, I mean, go through Medium, there's many an article out there that tells you what's the difference between UX and service and what is this and what is that. And we're adding to that noise, I'm not going to lie, we are contributing to it with this, but what we've tried to do is give a clear definition for our team so that they know, they can help identify what they're doing and when and what we mean when we're using these different terms.
Yeah, I think it's what works for us, isn't it? For code and our clients and our business. So, you know, whatever works for you, that's fine. But this is what we believe in.
Yeah, absolutely. Because everybody's got a slightly different slant on it. So we're trying to enable our team to have them right kinds of conversations. And being a researcher, I tend to do lots of research, which is just really looking at a problem and understanding that end-to-end experience for a customer or a user of the thing that they're doing. But actually, we used to treat everything as a product problem. Everything resulted in something that we need to make and really kind of focus on it just being that bit, even though we know that there's lots of operational things that need to happen around the outside. So as an example of that, I remember working on one of our client problems and they were like, we need to generate more leads. But once we get a lead, it's a really hand-holding kind of process. And it's like, great, so if we generate thousands more leads, are you going to increase the size of your call center? They're like, oh, no, we didn't think about that. And if we only focused on it from a product perspective, we'd actually just be creating a problem further on down the line. So what we've tried to do is start to say, well, actually, there's a service-based problem here. If we generate more leads, there's actually something that we need to change internally too. The arrows aren't working. So when we're doing this, we look at problems through two different lenses. So we've got the product lens and we've got the service lens. And how we're kind of thinking about this is our service lens really focuses on inside thinking. How's the operation currently working? What are they doing to supply that? And make sure that we're making sense of all the different inputs and outputs and data transfer within that organization to make that as good as it can be. So really looking inwardly, but with a really, really wide view of like, okay, how does all this work together? Then we've got our product lens, which is what we call outside thinking. So that's making sense of all the things that organization puts out into the world. What are the things that customer interacts with outside of the organization, and what are they actually trying to do, and where are the problems, so that we can make that as good as it can be. It's not gone over again. So then over to you, Carl, how we've started to break them lenses down.
Oh yeah, great. That's awesome. Good explanation there, Jess. Thanks. So obviously, like, we're starting to we talked about everything. We used to treat everything like a product problem, and that is kind of self-fulfilling in terms of the design and how the methods you would approach and the program you might design to kind of tackle that kind of client problem. So what we've realized is we needed a bit more sophistication within our understanding, or at least how we talk about design programs. And obviously, and how we would then apply that to the different types of problems. So thinking about, I suppose, this kind of nice upside down triangle and the laser focus to broad thinking, like at the minimum kind of like work that we will think about and get involved with is what we call journey design. It's essentially progressing a customer through a user journey. Even if we're just thinking about our page, you'd never think about that in isolation. You think about where they're coming from and where they're going to. So we always think about journeys as opposed to, even if it's like experimentation work, you're not just changing a page, you're changing a journey. So we think journey as a baseline of our design practice, and that's really about understanding and defining how we make those experiences commercially successful, but also relevant and useful for the customer. And then basically then the tier up of that is, I suppose, the next complexity level up is product design as a whole. So that's what we kind of almost like our default position is product design, but ultimately you're not really doing product design if you're just doing a user journey. Product design is much more complex. It's a bit more strategic. You're doing multiple journeys. You kind of need to understand the commercial value, the overarching big problem that a client has, and what does the business able to achieve and all that kind of things. And then the next one up is around service experience. So this is how a customer is then interacting with multiple products potentially. This is what we probably see most people describing as service design out there, essentially a customer experience of some touch points. And for us, we wanted to kind of like just say we don't say service design anywhere actually. We kind of like talk about service experience or service optimization. It's because we want to be a bit more sophisticated in how we kind of tackle that. So then service design, experience design is much more about how a user engages with multiple things, multiple touch points. So that's essentially experience design as a bracket, I suppose. Mm-hmm. The flip side of that is the service optimization design, which is what we're calling it. And that's really looking inside the organization. How can we optimize and work with the company, the teams, or whoever needs to facilitate and fulfill that experience back to the customer. So that's the inside outside. And then at the top level, we're kind of looking and working with the business and the organization as a whole to understand what's the strategic purpose of them actually doing these services and making these products and doing these funnels. Like, why are you doing this? What's the point? What's the value? Like, what's your strategy and all that kind of stuff. So we can be looking at all areas from right at the top right down to the bottom and understanding where we need to focus and defining and designing progress of work. I think the thing that this lets us do is like expand and kind of grow within each one of these types of designs. So we could just say we're just going to do some optimization design and look at you and work with your teams to help you deliver a service better. That's absolutely fine. We don't have to make it a product. And that was the kind of like enlightening moment for Code, really. Like, we don't have to make a product out of this engagement, which is great. Next one, please.
No problem.
And that then obviously maps to the service lens and product lens. So the way we see it is the product lens is the kind of bottom half. So it's like real practical, tangible things that a customer interacts with and uses as part of kind of fulfilling the service, the business service. So the business makes products to fulfill their service effectively, if you want to call it like that. Okay. But the top end is more service lens, and that's about helping us to kind of look at inside the business, understand what's going on, and all that kind of good stuff.
And I think that's it. Like, when we've been discussing this between Colin and I, we've been saying like service experience design is still very customer focused, but it's not really to us service design until we look at the internal operations too. So I think that's kind of the key thing that we took away from a lot of this.
Just had an annoying computer takeover of update. So I was like, don't update. Anyway, so back to this. So yeah, I think one of the things that we think of, I guess, is like almost like a USP for the design team and our ability is that we can think really broad, see the big picture, and then hone in on depth around kind of pointed kind of moments, whether that's within a service or a journey design or whatever. So we're always deep diving from broad picture to kind of depth and pointed kind of focus. And I think that's really important that you're able to do that. So if you've just got teams focused on the end laser focus bit, they never see the kind of like how that connects in the big picture. And it's really hard for anyone to make considered rational kind of decisions around how that's impacting to the whole. You're just doing the thing that you need to do, just optimizing the basket, or you're just doing this bit of the website and you're never connected and joining the dots. And if we don't do that, somebody else has to do that in the organization or help somebody else do that. But that's the thing that we've realized.
Yeah.
And then I guess this is, I suppose, like being able to talk about why we would maybe do service-based problems and product problems, but ultimately product, the way we treat product is about that kind of lean, agile, fast, iterative making things, putting it out into the world, learning from customers, releasing short-term value, kind of like building up kind of like what's the right thing to make and doing that iteratively. But from a service perspective, you can't necessarily do that as such. You need to kind of like think of it as mission control versus your rockets. So like, where's the rockets going? So you need to have a plan. And service-based problems almost like help you delve into kind of like the organization, what's going on, looking at the problems, looking at the complexity of the systems in place to understand then. So do we need to make a product? Do we need to do some training? Do we need to do some cultural change? Do we need to restructure? Do we need to whatever? It could be a call center script. That could be the best thing to change, as opposed to making a FAQ on a website. So it's understanding all the kind of competing parts to then understand what we need to do.
Absolutely.
But ultimately, what we still stand firm and believe in is, I guess, human-centered design and design thinking. Like when we're talking about service design and also looking at the organization, we're still looking at it from the lens of the customer or the staff or the employee or whatever. We're looking at it from a human perspective, because everything, all roads leads to a thing that a customer or a user is going to engage with. That's why the entity exists. So obviously it needs to fulfill a thing in the end. So we still believe in human-centered design, and the product lens is all about usability, feasibility, and desirability. Those kind of three things that kind of have to work together to make something worthwhile. We're very comfortable in that product space. Our product teams are designed around that. It's a multidisciplinary team where we're always kind of checking into those three things to make sure, are we making the right product? That kind of sense of robustness needs to exist in service lens or service design or whatever you want to call it. So we are checking into, does the user, this thing that we're creating, will the user need it? Is it viable? And what's the feasibility of change as opposed to technology? So it's shifting that. The feasibility is really important when we come to service experience, whatever you want to, that kind of package. So it's, can we do it? Should we do it? And how do we do it is really important, because otherwise you're just dreaming up future service blueprints with no real kind of like plan or kind of intent to kind of make that happen. And anyone can dream up an ideal service plan, like can do that in the back of your hand and then go, here you go. and then they'll go, okay, how do I do that? You've not even thought about cost of hiring people to do this job or whatever. Like we often talk about content in our products, but actually we need to think about that from a service perspective. Like, who's going to make all this content? That's really important. So next one, please, Jess. And this, I suppose, a bit maybe controversial, or maybe not, but we kind of stand and believe in the double diamond, the problem space, solution space. But there's always like for me personally anyway, there's always like a niggling feeling like it didn't actually articulate the entirety of the design process. It almost like enforced or kind of instilled like a bit of a waterfall kind of like mindset for the designers of like, you'd learn some stuff, you figure out the problem, then you come up with some ideas, do some lab-based testing or whatever, and then it goes into a product team and they start building it, and you almost like kind of walk away and move on to the next thing. And it doesn't instill like good practice of what designers need to kind of understand in terms of what code believe in. Like we believe in making things that work, but if you're not following that through into the change space, like observing that product in the real world, understanding the data, and then improving on that, how can you say you're a good designer? Because you're just making up things, and then someone's going to build it, and then you hope it works. So we wanted to kind of fold that story into our double diamond kind of like story, really. So it's like we work in the problem space, we work in the solution space, but we also work in the change space. So we're understanding and seeing it through. And that's like, we're not trying to invent double diamond, triple diamonds, whatever, but we wanted to add in that kind of really important aspect of design, which is seeing it in the real world and changing things. And that's applicable to service as well. Like, so obviously we might not be making interfaces when we're talking about some of the kind of organizational change things. We could be doing coaching or whatever, but we need to kind of be able to say, the human behavior within your organization is this, therefore we expect it to change to this, and we need to see that and work in the real world and see that change.
Absolutely. And for me, this is a huge benefit, because what this actually demonstrates is continual research at every phase as well. I think like what we've really tried to bake in there is we're always trying to drive everything via insight and make sure that we're making informed decisions. I think the only other additional point that I wanted to make with this stuff as well is it's not linear. We don't always have to start in the problem space. We might start in the change space and just observing something that's going on and then go, actually, we've seen a problem here. Let's go and investigate that further and loop around. Or we can start by making something and seeing what happens. I think it's actually much more tangible to be able to say, well, we can do this in cycles rather than actually being that linear process now that we've embedded that change step in as well.
Yeah. Very good. So we scared our designers and basically said, you've now got to do all this new stuff. But ultimately, like, it's what they're doing already. But what we kind of recognized is that actually just putting a bit of like structure around the kind of design programs that we get involved with really is very beneficial to our designers and our people in terms of how they can grow and develop their design skills. So everyone's familiar with like T-shaped as a principle, like having breadth and depth. But we used to just talk about breadth around problem and solution. So you can kind of like, our designers traditionally are in the solution space. They're really good at designing and making screen-based interfaces. And the way we stretch our designers is moving into the problem and research space so they can own the problem and understand it, so they can make better rationale and make better decisions and make better products. And the way they get depth is around kind of like, I suppose, product strategy and product leadership. But we've just kind of stretched that to be able to kind of go, you can go left and right into like understand the problem and right into like seeing and observing that change and making sure you're making really good products, and that's breadth. And then at depth, it's all about understanding and developing your strategic thinking and leadership. So moving from doing funnels and journey into broader product, then understanding the experience and touch points, and then you can delve into the organization about how that's working, and then at business. So like over the years of like you developing your skill set as a designer, however you want to call it, whatever discipline you want to be, that's kind of how we think of it in Code in terms of developing our people.
Absolutely.
And that was really like the rounding kind of like, I suppose, piece of the story of like, we want to do all this cool design stuff and this is what we're doing, but we need to have the people in place to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
I think that's it, isn't it?
That is it. So that's our theory of how we're evolving it. What you'll be happy to know is that there is going to be a part 2 follow-up to this. So this was kind of our intro to the way that we're thinking about things. But what we also want to do is do another session, because obviously this has already taken 26 minutes so far, where we go through some of the methods that we're putting in place and the frameworks that we're using to deliver that service thinking work. So just some examples of work that we've done in the past and how we've developed some of our methods to fulfill that too. And that's
it. Yeah, thanks for listening.
Anyone
got any questions?
Did anything not make sense? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, anything surprising or different? No, I mean, must all be hitting a chord, ringing true, which is good. Is anyone trying to do this inside their organization or thinking about service design currently?
Actually, I've got a bit of a question. Oh, sorry, I think somebody's already asking a question, but on mute. Lucy, you sure?
Go for it, Lucy.
Okay.
Go
on. Lucy, I think you're still on mute, but I think you're asking what's in.
Yeah, no, I was asking if I was still on mute because I could see it was there. Yeah, it's not a question, so if Joe's got one, then go for it. I was just going to say, yeah, this is definitely something that we're looking at with Hillary. So I'm really keen to sort of get a feel for what you guys have been doing with some of your existing clients. I've kind of made a note of slide 12, how much are you doing and where, but it sounds like that's going to come in on the 11th of January. Just have to wait till then.
We kind of like doing different types of service orientated work with most of our clients, really. Like we don't have like service clients as such as well. Like we just kind of, as the nature of us working at depth, with customers and insight and the business that we work with, like yourselves, like we just get to know loads of stuff that we can kind of help work with. So yeah, I think we could definitely share some of that. Definitely.
Brilliant. Joe, did you say you'd got a question?
I did, yeah. I'm sort of sorry after talking over everyone, but yeah, I suppose my question was about whether there's any other organisations that have really inspired you in terms of taking this direction. Whether there's, it might not just be an organisation; it might be anyone who's written some interesting papers or whatever it might be. Something that's inspired you in terms of this journey. I'm being a magpie here, by the way, just trying to steal other inspirations.
Well, I guess like it's like years in the making, this position actually for us, me and Jess, we're always talking about this because there's always something coming out in the industry that's sparking or challenging our view or agreeing our view. So like right back to the government, I guess, when they launched all their kind of like working practices and they talk about their experience around as service design. And that really sparked that kind of conversation. And I think for us, it's just like, how do we move that forward and make that real for what we need? And then I guess there's lots of agencies like Snook, because that's quite good. They do great stuff in the service space, like they've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
They're based in London. And there's lots of like training providers, maybe that's trying to step into like offering service design boot camps and things. But I suppose what we'd observed like collectively is like necessarily like when everyone's talking about service design, we just almost like we not rejected it, but didn't quite agree on the definition of what people are saying when they say service design. So we've kind of like, and as a consequence, product design at Code and service design has been this interchangeable kind of like statement because it's so muddy. So what we've tried to do is just kind of really like kind of say this is product and this is service and this is what we mean, like and you can carry on doing what you need to do, and if it works for you, that's brilliant.
I think that's it, because especially like from our perspective, UX is what I believe a lot of people term as service design, because we're talking about the customer experience or the user experience, dependent on your organisation. And actually, if you're not, this is why I made the point of like, if you're not actually changing anything within the business, then are you actually doing service design? Because you're still just doing customer experience design or user experience design, really, unless you're affecting that kind of change. And I think this is where the point that Colin and I have started from, to then go, well, what is everybody else saying, doing, and kind of developing that from that kind of perspective of like, well, let's stop having it so it is that muddy, hard conversation and start making it clearer. So at least internally, even if the world's still using different definitions, we know what we're talking about.
Cool. It's a really good talk, by the way, guys. Really interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I've seen, Luca, you've put in the chat, do you have an internship programme? Not at the moment is the honest answer. But that we look at that every year and starting apprenticeship schemes and stuff. So keep an eye out, because there's nothing to say that we won't. It's just that we don't have one currently. Yeah,
it's one of those things. Yeah, we do have open jobs actually in all levels of design, apart from a graduate, unfortunately. But that is definitely something that we are actively looking at next year.
Absolutely.
So keep your eyes peeled.
No problem. Any more questions? We still have quite a few people here, so we must be interesting.
It's just watching telly, isn't it? It's just watching people chat. It's good.
Lunchtime Netflix.
So maybe like obviously we've got a plan of what we were going to talk about next. We're going to, like, the next session, we're going to share some methods and frameworks and examples. If you've got any like specific things you'd like us to talk about, like let us know and we can kind of create it a little bit.
So we've just got another question in the chat, Carl.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just reading it.
Yeah. How do you think this approach fits into an organisation with a variety of technology-based / driven products, especially where Pepsi development is driven by product development. Product development is driven by changes in technology, infrastructure, access network. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so I think you still need to have somebody or a department that's solely responsible for looking at how those products connect. So you might have a traditional customer experience team. That's not, and I don't mean like call centers, I mean like internal customer experience team that's more strategic about thinking about how all those products might connect. It's a mindset shift. We believe technology enables customers, not
technology decisions.
So you don't buy technology that then makes the experience. It's the other way around. Like, what does the customer service need to do, and then technology supports that. So yeah, I think there's still a product world that needs to exist. Obviously, like you still need to have those technology driven products in organizations, but you have to have some view of how those things connect.
I would also say, and this is, we've worked on various different partnerships in the past where some of them have been really tech kind of focused. I think the things that I find that really help people is basically doing some research to point out where the tech is falling down and is creating kind of frictions within that experience in general, because then we can say, well, this product isn't doing this, and I know we've got to have all this infrastructure and everything else, but that's not to say that, well, we'll talk about this in the next one, but it's not to say that you can't run a pilot program. So it could be that you need a live chatbot and your infrastructures don't enable that. So you can buy one that you bolt onto your website to pilot that, see whether that's working. What can you do about, like, is it actually going to make an improvement to that customer experience? And then if it is, then change the technology strategy behind that. But it's kind of like, how do you test it out to prove that there's value before you have to go in and change a massive architecture or infrastructure first?
Yeah, but I guess if you're really driven by decision makings based on technology, what you kind of can't do, I think you then have to start thinking about what's the impact of that. So whether that's impact on customer pain and frustration, and then revenue, I guess, as well, is obviously always what's your metrics of those products, and then if the technology is failing, like, you need to then work it back down to kind of how's that meeting the needs of the customer. Yep. And then you can then instigate some research and understanding, and then go right back down into like pinpoint the problems and then work your way back up.
It's almost balancing all of this again. It's that kind of, well, what does the business need? If it needs to generate an income, what does the user need to get through that experience? And then what can the tech actually do for it? And if there isn't a cohesive balance, we're just being very led down one way and the other two are likely to suffer. So how do we get that kind of balance in the middle of everything?
Yeah. Well remembered, Jess.
There you go.
do the right thing.
Any more?
Can you offer any advice for how you might build an in-house service design team for a large company whose current design team is focused on product design? I suppose that's kind of like where our team is at. It's like we've hired product designers that are really good in the make space. And kind of stretching from like that journey design into product design and then into the next level. I suppose you got to find and look for your senior product designers or UXers, whatever your roles are, whether it's researchers that are confident and comfortable stepping further and deeper into that kind of like system level research or system level change and design, and thinking broader pictures beyond just thinking about screen interface. So like look for those people that are interested in that, I suppose. They're all like service designers kind of roles out there, but then you kind of got to think about what you want those service designers to do and think about the output you need from them, and then track back a little bit.
And what are the skills that you want to see? Like what is it that's different from the people that you already have that you actually want to see from them? But I suppose we're kind of in that process now. Like the whole point of us evolving our team is that we're creating these skills and getting people to focus on some more of these skills. And eventually in the future, we might have people who are solely service designers. But at the moment, we're just giving people that breadth of skill. And then if we start to see more and there's more traction behind it, then we'll start to redefine roles again.
Yeah, I think for us, it's the lead. Our design leads are like the top level, most experienced designers in our design team, and they're the ones that are probably more able to kind of step more naturally into organizational change or strategy, because they're really comfortable with facilitating and talking to senior stakeholders and making sure and voicing their kind of opinions and having really solid rationale. So I think you've got to have some serious kind of like experience to be able to then start doing service design or service type work. I think in my view anyway, I don't think you could just step into it as like a graduate. You got to there's a founding of design soft skills that you need to have before you can start doing that kind of work. Definitely
complex. Like I'd personally be terrified if a first day on a job straight out of uni was like, go and change a business. I'd be like, what?
It's quite consultative, and we don't just when we say like organizational design, we're not changing businesses at the top. We're kind of like working out. We're like, that's not our business. We don't want to change businesses. Well, I don't anyway. They're gonna, who are you? Why do we need to change our business? But it's more about, are you doing the right thing? Are you doing it? Could we be doing this better? Like helping them observe where things are going wrong in the whole system, because a business is a massive organic kind of complex system, isn't it, around lots of big ecosystem of teams and silos and technology systems and human behavior and all that kind of stuff. So we can help unpick that and present it in a communicative way so that our stakeholders and the business could then make informed decisions.
Yeah.
We don't go in and say, you need to sack this team. That's not what we're about. We're about helping people work better together. I think that is probably a better philosophy.
Absolutely.
But doing that is hard.
I was just going to say, actually, just on that point, it would be really interesting if in the next session you could, without kind of giving away any challenging with you guys, but you've got this is really difficult because X, Y, Z department or team wasn't on board, or this is how we help to like get over those challenges. Because from my perspective, that would be one of the biggest challenges we face.
Yeah.
Departments have their priorities and metrics, and they don't always understand what we're trying to drive.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can have a think about that, definitely.
Definitely demonstrate the ugly truth.
Please.
Yeah, so I think those methods that you just put, Matt, will probably come in the next bit.
The recording will be shared, won't it, Yayan?
Yeah, I'll email out to everyone, and it'll also be on our YouTube shortly. Yeah, and obviously part 2 will be on the 11th of January, so just after Christmas and the New Year. So hopefully we'll see you all back then for part 2.
Amazing. Thanks for coming along. I hope you found it interesting.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.